Welcome to Why the Fuck Not. We are here on episode 6, which is a special episode, right, boys?
Special.
Yeah.
I'm Ed.
I'm Dwight.
I'm Aaron.
And this week we've decided
Conspiracy Week.
Conspiracy Week, boys. It's finally happening.
Whoa.
We get to hear Aaron rant.
Oh.
Oh boy, I can't wait to hear this.
Yeah, I think they've been waiting for this for a while.
Well, I certainly have anyway.
I love conspiracies.
Yeah.
Oh,
Who doesn't love a good conspiracy, though?
Oh, the thing is like it kind of gets that chemical going in your head that like it's almost like endorphins when you start hearing about
Makes
stuff
you
that
question things. Yeah, exactly.
Get that kind of questioning going. But before we do that, Dwight, how's your week been?
It's been really good, actually. And I was just telling you guys yesterday, I went to like a hefty meditation last night, so I was super prepared for this. Kayla, my roommate, I guess we call her.
That's a shout out to you.
Shout out to Kayla. She saged the room for us, so we got in the nice Zen mode. And you know those, I forgot what they're called, and I feel really dumb for not knowing what it's called, but it's like a little bowl.
Oh, with
like
a rock, and you like...
No, not a rock. It's like a wooden stick almost, and you like... I'm not talking about smudge bowls.
No, I thought you were talking about smudge bowling.
No.
Singing bowls.
The singing bowls. And I didn't realize how hard they were to use. I actually tried one yesterday. She's like, because she was doing it like super good, and I was like, oh, let me try. Tried it, couldn't do it. So
just all rough and shit. It's like, this is how I do it when I'm by myself.
Apparently, make noise. Apparently, like this is just a weird thing I've heard, but like if you meditate and if you're like in a clear mind state, apparently the bowl sings for you better. So
really?
It's like it's supposed to be like your internal voice.
Well, I mean, it's almost like those little balls that you toss around in your hands. Like you can kind of like move around, and they have a ringing sound when you do them correctly.
I'm super good at those.
I've got two of them.
Is it your mantra? I
think it's your mantra.
Is that helps with?
That's what I heard. Is it's like a mantra in your core, like because you're like constantly like moving everything. Like when you're doing this, you're not just moving your palm; you're moving like
everything,
almost everything when you're doing it, and it's supposed to get you into the same sort of thing moment. I can make the sound, but I'm definitely not in any type of trance. I'm just like, yay!
It's a cool sound though. It's a really cool sound that you get out of it. Yeah. So it was fun. Did a nice meditation. Got my driveway done. Feeling in a good mood today. Woke up nice and early. Aaron woke up nice and early.
Yeah, that was I tried to wake you up and you were already awake. I was shocked. Aaron, you are a changed man.
You're changed. This is becoming a regular thing.
Don't hold me to it.
Next week I'm going to be so late.
Yeah, probably.
Right on, Aaron. How about yourself? How's your week been?
Not too bad. Just been working, gaming, the usual.
Yeah, I've been seeing you've been posting a lot of videos on gaming. Like,
yeah, now that I got that video card, I can actually record shit well.
Oh, so this is a lot better than your last one, then.
Oh, so much better. So much better.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I was watching some of the footage. It didn't seem choppy.
I'm not good yet. But at least I have nice recordings.
Nice.
That's
not a problem at all.
Yeah.
Myself has been pretty good, you know. Like, for the most part, it's been way more relaxing than the past, 5 weeks that I've had.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's been a long...
Most relaxing week in 5 weeks.
Yeah, it's the first week that I kind of I feel like there's no pressure on any part of my life. I'm just kind of going. Nice. Which is nice. I haven't had that in about, almost a month and a bit. So it's kind of nice to just sit back, relax a little bit. And I've had all week to think about this episode. So I've been like, what am I going to do? How am I going to approach this? Mm-hmm. What research am I going to get on this? So I've been quite excited to actually sit down with you guys and be able to do this with you because it's been on my mind literally all week. So
awesome. You have that vacation coming up soon, right?
Yeah, I got a vacation coming up in about a month and a half. So actually tomorrow we're going to go and kind of finalize everything on the vacation. So
did you go with the travel agent?
Yeah, we went with the travel agent. We thought it'd be the best thing to do.
Do you think travel agents are almost like a lost art? Or do you think it's going to be because a lot of people, I'm saying the older generation who is they're not really computer savvy maybe, or they don't trust when they purchase something on the internet. But a lot of the time, what a travel agent's doing is just pulling stuff that you can view yourself
easily,
and finding the best deal for you and sending you on your way based on what your needs are, right?
Man, that's
Expedia.ca. That's what they do too, right?
That's what, yeah. So I mean, do you think it's a lost thing, a lost art now? Is it going to be a lost business in a matter of time once everyone's savvy enough? There's many. There's Trivago, and there's sites like that where you can Expedia, where you can really just type in where you want to go. It'll give you the best deal.
I think it's
compare all the other airlines and all the other flights.
Experience if they're able to tell you, hey, this place is nice during this time.
That's
or
true.
Something
That's true.
Here's what I feel like I got out of this experience of going to a travel agent versus just booking it ourselves. Because originally we were going to go to San Diego and kind of do a car trip up from San Diego, LA, and all that.
Right.
Just check out the coast. With this travel agent, she actually had suggested, well, you could do this, or for even lesser amount of money, we can take you to the other coast and go to check out Orlando.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And we can get you in a hotel, the flights and everything, and this is exactly what it's going to cost. And you can check these parks out, and this is what's really popular at this point. And in 5 months from now, this attraction's going to be ready, so you can check this out. And she kind of like gave suggestions, which I don't think you get.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
It became more of a...
Well, they've sent how many people on the way, and they've gotten feedback from like everyone usually that has traveled, right? They usually give good or bad feedback to where they've been. Right? That's what they ask for afterwards, and hopefully, so she probably knows a lot about where you're going and the good things about where you're going. I guess that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah, and like it really is. I think it is going to be a lost art, and it's a shame because this is way more personalized than just typing something into a computer and it's just going like, here's the top results.
People don't like people though.
Yeah, I don't see why though. I can't remember her name right now. I've only met with her twice, but she was fucking excellent.
She was awesome.
She was really nice. Yeah, she was enthusiastic about us going, which I think is something that's really important in that type. It's like the customer service. You have to be enthusiastic about the thing that you're giving. I've tried selling stuff like as a salesman, and I wasn't enthusiastic about it. And it's fucking hard to sell. Yeah, it's way too hard.
We did. I went through a travel agent when we did. My stepbrother just got married not too long ago, and we went through a travel agent. But I think it made a lot more sense because there was like 30 of us going. So it was like easy to like make sure everyone was paying the same, you know what I mean? Everyone's staying in the same place. Everyone's staying in the rooms make sense where they're staying. Like it organized this all better, opposed from everyone just like, you know what I mean? Maybe all over the map, and you're on this side of the resort.
That would be hard to do yourself with 30 people.
Yeah, making sure everyone's paying. And
when we were getting married,
easy for everyone, and so that made sense.
Yeah, when we were getting married and family was coming into town, it was hard to find a hotel that would house them and like get a good deal for them. Like that was hard to do just as myself, like trying to be like, okay, well everybody just go to this. Even that small little bit was hard. And having somebody doing that for you, it takes a lot of responsibility off of you. Like, I mean, it's supposed to be a vacation.
I don't think they get much commission out of it, do they even?
I would imagine not. Like I went through CAA, which is like AAA out in America. Same sort of deal. Like they have travel agents there that if you're a CAA member, they will just sit down with you. It doesn't cost you anything. You can just sit down, consultate, and then they'll just do like the like here's your options, and you just pay them, and it's done. Everything's
easier way to do it too, I guess.
Oh yeah, so much easier. Credit card isn't going to 6 or 7 different places; it's going to one place.
Right. Yeah.
Which makes a little.
And it's all
sense.
legitimized, right? It gives you kind of a peace of mind.
Now, can I go in there and be like, I want to go to Peru to do ayahuasca? Will they let me do that?
I would like to see that. Just let me type this up on the computer and see.
I don't know.
Like, oh yes, we have 6 active bookings. Right
turns
now.
out in September you're going to be able to save an extra $40.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah. The shaman might not be very good though.
Yeah, you give a little, you take a little. Well, if you didn't know, this is Why the Fuck Not, where 3 guys sit around one table and discuss 3 different topics, basically for your amusement. We had mentioned earlier, today we are doing Conspiracy Week, which is great. We're going to mix up the formula a little bit today. Today I'm going to be the one starting, which is, it's going to be a little bit different. I feel like a lot of pressure on my shoulders. Yeah,
huge pressure.
A little much, but I think I can do it. I think we're good. I'll take the lead on this. So I'm going to let you guys chime in whenever you guys want. If you have any questions or anything, by all means.
What's the conspiracy we're talking about today?
I've got a good one.
Before we start this,
we're
you know, when we're talking about these conspiracies, we're not claiming to be experts in the area. This is just what we've researched. This is something we're interested in talking about. We're going to give the facts that we have researched and we know to be.
And by all means, if you have other facts that are contradictory to ours, throw it in the comments. We love the discussion. So
we don't want to be biased about it. We just want to state what we know, and that's it.
Yeah, so that's your disclaimer for the whole episode, I think, because all of ours are pretty controversial. Mine's particularly controversial in the community that I'm basing it in.
Mm-hmm. And please do not sue us.
Yeah, we would appreciate you not suing us. That would be really nice.
That's all we can ask.
All right, so the year 1967. U.S. launches the Lunar Orbiter 3. Muhammad Ali TKOs Ernie Terrell for the heavyweight title. Nice. I think that might have been his first run on the title. I'm not exactly sure. It's pretty close anyway. The Beatles release Penny Lane, Strawberry Fields. Yeah, this is 1967 February.
What a huge year.
Oh, that's a big one. And Jimi Hendrix walks into the studio and records Purple Haze. So, pretty monumental month. But February 20th, 1967. In a small town just north of Aberdeen, out pops a little baby named Kurt Donald Cobain. If you haven't figured it out, we're going to be talking about Kurt and Courtney and the conspiracy between suicide versus death. So, as I had mentioned, he was born 1967. At around age 7 or 8, his parents go through a divorce. It's a little messy. His mother gets majority custody of Kurt. By about age 13, he's no longer living with his parents. He's kind of on his own, and this is a monumental point in his young life, because at this point, he doesn't have a home, and he's not going to have a home until after Nevermind gets released. He's living homeless until after Nevermind.
And this is when he was 13 years old?
This is the age 13. He stayed at his friend's place. It was a school kid, somebody that he went to school with, and the father, I believe, was a teacher. Basically, his rent was to come in and make sure he attended school and just kind of help out with the daily chores. When he wasn't staying there regularly, because he always was there, he would actually spend nights underneath a bridge in the city. And this is in Aberdeen at this point. So this bridge got immortalized in the song Something in the Way. If you've ever heard that song, I believe it's on Nevermind. That song basically is him talking about living underneath this bridge.
This sounds a lot like the guy from Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh yeah, the underneath the bridge, Anthony Kiedis. Yeah, and the same deal. This was a place for him to kind of do his drugs and kind of get away from that type of concept of like being the household. Like this is where he can go and just kind of like, I'd hate to use the word trip out, but like take his time to like
that's where
explore.
You go.
Yeah,
when you want to do IV drugs, usually is under a bridge.
Yeah, well, I mean, to the degree, like Anthony Kiedis, from what I understand, under the bridge is where he would pick up his drugs. He would buy it from the dealer. Then that's why he immortalized that bridge. Even at that point, because I think when he was getting those drugs, he's at like 5 albums in. Or 4 albums in, I can't remember how many it is, but anyway, it's about the 4th album in. He's already got a lot of popularity, so he goes under this bridge to be incognito and people not know who he is and be able to pick up his drugs.
But then he sings about it and blows his own cover.
But that was never supposed to happen. This is kind of going off topic, but that song was just a poem that he wrote in his book. And when they were writing Blood Sugar Sex Magic, they were having pretty serious writer's block. And they went through his poems, and they're like, well, this poem seems really good. And it took a lot of fighting to get Anthony Kiedis to actually record Under the Bridge, because this was his personal life put into a paper. And this actually set the tone of Red Hot Chili Peppers to go off and be very, like, much more personal in their music. And that, if you notice, Blood Sugar Sex Magic was actually where the sound changed. And that was also due to the fact that their guitarist Hillel had an overdose and died, and they brought in John Frusciante as the new guitarist, who was actually a fan. Whole new story. That's going a little bit far. I kind of went off on a tangent. Sorry, people. This is what
much about music. Way too much.
Loves talking about it.
Yeah, I really do. It's hard for me. So if you bring up other bands, there's a chance I'm going to go off a little bit on it. So anyway, yes, Kurt would get away from this house and go under the bridge. This is a place for him to kind of just do some drugs. And at this point, it wasn't heavy drugs. It was like pot. just the basic stuff. Maybe heaviest thing he would dabble in is maybe cocaine or something like that. At this point,
think we've all smoked pot under a bridge at some point in our lives.
Yeah, I think last week. I did that last night. So anyway, he would get away from this like, we'll call it a foster home. It isn't. It's just a place that he's staying by going there. This is kind of important. He had one girlfriend. Her name is Tracy Miranda. And it's important because this is his first and only love that he had before he hit popularity. They dated for a solid 3 years. He would stay at her place, and this is after he was at his friend's place. He would stay at her place often enough, and it was kind of like, just clean up after yourself and you're fine. And she nurtured him artistically, essentially. He would go there because he never really had a mom. He was kind of looking for a mother figure. So he spent a lot of time in this house, and she kind of mothered him through things, and they were the same age, a very pretty girl back in the 80s. And he would sit there doing collage art, and this is kind of important to the story because it gives you a piece of his character. A lot of his pictures and a lot of his art came through with fetuses and women's anatomy. So it'd be stuff about uteruses, and he actually did a big collage. It's not, nobody has this collage, so it's only through hearsay, but a collage of diseased vaginas and pieces of meat that he put together as a piece of art.
Pussy collage.
He actually, wonderful. He did it while he was working as a janitor at a doctor's office.
And how old was he at this time, roughly?
At this point, he probably was about 18, just about the 18
years
19.
Old. Pussy collages.
Pussy collages.
Disease pussy collages.
Well, I mean, if you're going to start somewhere, this is the place to start.
This is before the internet. You got to do it yourself sometimes.
So all throughout high school, he was a fairly skinny guy. He always wanted to try to bulk up a little bit, and part of the reason why is because he was constantly being teased. Also very important to the story. So the jocks around there would tease him about being this skinny, small kid. So in high school, you get teased about one or two things. You're too small, too fat. Usually somewhere within there. He hit the skinny side. Did not get along with a lot of the people in school. He had very few friends, but the friends that he did have were very dear to him. And it's really important to note that at this point, he didn't have a home. He never had a place that he could say, this is my house. He's never been on a lease. He's never had this. The only thing he really had as a home was his guitar. It went with him everywhere he went. So he'd be able to sit down, play some music, and that brought him to the closest thing that he could probably call a home. Another thing that should be mentioned at this point, and this is also very important to this, is that he suffered from chronic stomach pains. Really, really bad. Like, it basically made him incapacitated when the pains were going on. Also made him not be able to eat properly because of how bad it was. We'll get into that a little bit more.
My friend has a similar problem. He has IBS, and it's not fun going through, apparently.
Yeah, it's apparently very painful. So we're going to start hitting timeline here, because the point of this is I'm going to go through a point-by-point timeline of life to death. We'll try and get through it relatively quickly. So June 15th, 1989, the very first Nirvana album, Bleach, gets released. This is monumental for two songs, essentially. There's other ones too, but this is where the song Love Buzz came from, which was an old 1960s English band cover. And that got a lot of popularity before the album actually came out. It hit the Sub Pop Records singles, and it kind of got sent out, because back in the day, you could sign up for records, which basically means they're just going to send you random records. And this, what happened? This got sent out. That record single is worth a couple $1,000s if you have it, because there was only a certain amount of them. So that kind of gave a little bit of buzz for Love Buzz for the new album coming out, Bleach. That also is the album that spun out About a Girl. And About a Girl is actually about Tracy Miranda, the girl that he was staying with. So these are two very staple songs for Nirvana, and this kind of gave the footing to what's about to happen. Before I continue on, though, there is two very major players in the story. It's not just Kurt Cobain. It is also Courtney Love. I don't think Courtney Love, when she, okay, well, let's just go from the beginning for Courtney Love. Very quick one. This won't take long at all. But Love was the child of Hank Harrison, so it was Courtney Harrison. Hank Harrison was a manager for the band The Grateful Dead.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He must have had some fun times.
Oh, I'm sure he's got lots of stories that had nothing to do with this. I'm going to be getting into him a little bit later. But anyway, family divorces at 5. So again, similar situation to Kurt Cobain, very young divorce. At age 9, Courtney gets diagnosed with a mild form of autism. She shoplifts at about age 14, which brings her into juvie. Well, in juvie, she has a dispute. She ends up stabbing somebody within this dispute. Didn't kill, wasn't fatal, but it was enough for her to end up having to go from group home to group home to group home at this point. So she's no longer with her family. Later in life, it's not as important, but she becomes a stripper, to give you an idea of where her life has headed. Right. So this becomes basically her life. On top of that, she was never really a musician. She was a groupie. And nobody really thinks about that anymore, because everybody thinks of Courtney Love as the band whole. She was a groupie, and she was like, within the circuit of punk, post-punk, and grunge, she was a big one. Like, people knew her name. She would show up quite often, and she lived in England for a while, so she'd have this fake English accent and stuff, and people knew who she was. All right, so back onto the storyline and the timeline.
So when we say groupie, are we talking about so it's basically she followed the band around, she slept with the band?
Kind of. It wasn't quite to that degree. She wasn't sleeping with all the band. The name is called, if you just give me 1 second for reference, it's called Theater of Sheep, was the band that she was following.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so in Theater of Sheep, the lead singer, she was kind of dating and trying to coach him into being a famous singer. And again, very post-punk, so it was at that point where punk hadn't broken to mainstream yet. So November 5th, 1990, this is based off a reference on diaries that Kurt had left behind after he passed away, was the first time he picks up heroin. Now, some friends dispute that it was heroin that he took first, because at this point in his life, in 1990, he was deathly scared of needles. He couldn't handle them. It scared the living shit out of him. So that kind of gives that idea of maybe it wasn't this.
Well, there are other ways to take heroin.
Which is what I'm about to get into. A lot of his friends think he took Percodan, which is a prescription opiate that you can take.
Oh, Percodan.
Yeah, Percodan. Sorry, not Percodian. Sorry. Percodan. So they think that's what he started off on, was this at this point. Although in his head it's heroin, because he's still pretty young into the drug scene.
I think it would make sense if he started out on something like Percodan, because a lot of opiate addicts, that's how they start. They start out seeking something to get rid of their pain, like let's say his stomach pain.
Yes, and that's
so
why
they start taking pills, and then eventually they need something stronger.
Yeah.
At this point, he hasn't started using heroin to cope with the pain. This was just something he tried, and realized that, hey, it's helping. Well, it's helping getting rid of the pain too, but he didn't know that until he took it, right? So this is a very monumental moment for him. He's like, oh wow, when I took this, something is actually taking this pain away, and up till this point, nothing was doing it.
And he seems like he's kind of not in the best place, and there's a lot of euphoria associated with things like heroin, so it probably just made him feel good.
Oh, absolutely. On top of that, like the euphoric heroin, like that feeling, which we've mentioned in past episodes, what this type of stuff can do for you. So that definitely helps within the situation. And again, it's a prescription version of it, so it's a little weaker than the typical like shooting up heroin, clearly. But he liked it, and you could tell that he liked it. September 24th, 1991. Very, very monumental day in music history. For those of you that already know, you know where I'm going with this. But for those of you that don't, which I don't think neither one of you do,
I wasn't born yet.
Yeah, this marked a very important day where gone was the gimmicky band of big hair and spandex and basically dressing like women on stage, that glam rock.
Oh, those were the days.
Oh yeah, and then like Guns N' Roses was still pretty high in the front of like popularity at this point. They were one of the biggest bands out there. So was Michael Jackson at the same time. But Nevermind gets released. Now they've traded in the big hair, they've traded in the spandex, and they took on flannel and ripped jeans.
Yeah,
the 90s
long
took
hair.
over.
And this was monumental. This was huge. Nevermind comes out. I do believe it was Michael Jackson's Dangerous that was number 1 on the Billboard Top 10. This gets released that day. It became number 1 on the Top 10 and knocked Michael Jackson's Dangerous out from 60 weeks being in number 1, I think it was, something like that, some ridiculous number that Michael Jackson was in. This knocked it out, and it was the only album to be able to do this, and it was a debut too. So the Billboard Top 100 debuting on 1, pretty huge for a small band out of Aberdeen. Like Washington didn't really pump out a lot of big names. Washington was known for its punk scene, which was punk and rap, but mostly punk. Rap isn't until later, but regardless, this was huge. This was a big thing, and it was really big in Kurt's mind too, because up until this point, he still has not had a home. And that's still after the release of this album. It wasn't for a few months later that he could even say he has a home. He hasn't played, he hasn't been anywhere. He's always been on tour, so he didn't need a place for a home. So there's no place he can take a sanction and be like, this is my this is my place. I come here and I feel like this is where I should be. He doesn't have this at this point, and he has the number 1 fucking album on Billboard.
So the guy has money at this point.
Just starting to. He was broke already at this point. He was broke and homeless at the point of the release. And he was for at least the first month, because you don't get those checks right away. The numbers have to come in first.
Do you know how he got it recorded?
Not exactly this one. Bleach had already produced a little bit of money for him. Not a ton. Actually, Bleach's story is a little interesting. Just to jump back real quick, Bleach was recorded by their friend loaning them $606.17. That's literally the exact amount that it cost them to have the studio time to record their first album in Bleach.
Wow.
Yeah. So this one, they earned a little bit of money from that. Actually, I can't remember that guy's name, but he's actually in the liner credits of the album for giving the money. They made him an official band member for paying it. But anyway, they've earned a little bit of money. They signed to a new label. Part of the reason why they signed to a new, a major label, is because there's a band called Sonic Youth that they both admire, or they all admired greatly, and they just signed to the exact same. I think it was Geffen Records that they signed to. So this, in Kurt's mind, was like, if Sonic Youth can do it, so can we. So this wasn't a big, nobody heard of the grunge scene at this point yet. It was a chance. All the music industry was taking a chance on this type of thing. So Kurt, now starting to get some money, has a really hard time dealing with the fact that he would play these songs and he would see, in his words, jocks in his show playing, singing along to this music that he used to get picked on for liking by these exact same people. So this really bothered him. Not to mention that his stomach pain has been increasing greatly at this point. So this is just at the beginning of Nevermind. In October 21st, 1991, Kurt and Courtney meet after a Nirvana gig, and they had a very slight meeting at a show in Portland, somewhere in around 90. So this is their second time running into each other, and they're kind of flirting with each other. They kind of wrestle around because this is the way Kurt flirts. He just kind of wrestles around with them. So he wrestled around with Courtney. Courtney hands him a number. Kurt calls her at about 3 a.m. They talk for about an hour. And by talk, I mean Courtney just wouldn't shut up and he just listened. And that's one thing that Kurt, from all of his friends, have been kind of talked about. Is like, he's this great person, but nobody ever met somebody that just listens. And that's what he did. He wasn't trying to get the next word in. And if you think you have of any conversations they have with a majority of people, they're always trying to wait for their turn to say their thing.
Yeah, people love hearing themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Kurt didn't. Kurt wanted to hear what you had to say, and that was a big thing. So like with Courtney, who always wanted to talk and always was like this electric firecracker of energy, always talking, it was perfect for Kurt to be able to sit there and listen to. So anyway, they kind of get it off, and right at this point, where they met up there and kind of talked, they became almost inseparable, always around each other. February 24th, 1992, 1 year later, Kurt and Courtney get married. Presumably, and from what most of the friends say, is because right now Courtney's pregnant with Kurt's baby. So Kurt, feeling that it was his duty almost to marry Courtney because of it, would have conversations with some of his friends that they've come out and talked about where he didn't feel that he was necessarily in love with Courtney, but it was the right thing to do, and should I do these conversations with the friends, okay? Regardless of anything, he ends up getting married. June 10th, Kurt buys a cabin in Carnation, Washington, okay? Now, the reason why this is important is because he bought this cabin. It's the only place that it's his dream is to have this place kind of off the grid. We've talked about it. Yeah, secluded. Yeah. Doesn't have to deal with things, and especially with the popularity he's dealing with now, it's perfect for him. He gets to go off. So he buys this cabin, like I'm talking dirt bike, everything, basically builds a house that's going to be perfect for him. He literally never takes a step into this place. Courtney allegedly started spreading lies to Kurt that there was a redneck family out there, or a redneck group, that wanted almost vigilante justice against the Cobains. They basically saying that they want to do bodily harm and hurt their family. So Courtney kept saying this because Courtney didn't like the thought of being in the woods. She's a town girl, and she wants to flaunt money. So
she's a groupie.
Yeah, she's a groupie. So Kurt reluctantly goes with Courtney and buys a pretty well a mansion, not quite, it's a little less, in Seattle, Washington instead. Kurt is very embarrassed by this house. He doesn't like showing off money, and this is a very big house for him. It's got a guest house above the garage, which is basically like a very big apartment above the garage that people can stay at if they need to. Plus, it's a 3-story house. It's very big. Kurt really didn't like this, and it really bothered him that Courtney really wanted to flash this money around all the time, and that's something that
when you go from sleeping under a bridge to a
mansion.
To a mansion. I mean, that's
Yeah, so that's why this is so monumental. He ends up selling his lifelong dream of being in the woods. He sells it and decides to go with the Seattle idea. August 18th, 1992, Francis Bean Cobain is born. Now, finally, this is a big change in him because he starts seeking different things in life because he's a father. He's starting to look at things a little bit differently, and that's kind of the whole monumental aspect of that. September 1st, so we're going from August 18th just to September 1st, 1992, Kurt feels his life is a little too public, and part of the reason why is Vanity Fair publishes an article about Kurt going to New York City to do Saturday Night Live. There's allegations about how him and Courtney were doing heavy drugs, popping pills. Courtney was shooting up on heroin while being pregnant with Francis, and this gets publicized. Really, really takes a lot into Kurt. Basically digs deep, and he's starting to really almost shy away, not wanting to be public eye anymore at this point.
Is he still using drugs?
Yes, he is. Yeah, he's still using drugs at this point. There is a point coming up where he starts getting himself off, but it's still prominent. Drugs is going to be the key to everything in this whole case. May 2nd, 1993, there was an accidental overdose with a big question mark on this. It really wasn't people thought this
was the accidental part, or
not the accident. It's weird. I'll go through the story real quickly. He was shooting. He shot about $30-40 worth of heroin. He started getting a little incoherent and kind of like not, his motor skills weren't working very well. So Courtney, in her wise behavior, thought it'd be a good idea to shoot him up more.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah, gave him, and she claims that it saved his life because she shot him up with more heroin, but he had to go to the hospital. So she feels the hero in this situation. Either way, a lot of people thought of this as the very first time he tried to commit suicide. It was a complete accident. It was just, he took a little too much than his body could handle at this point and kind of came incoherent, and Courtney's a fucking idiot.
Which happens a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with the heroin.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to judge, right? So Courtney, in her wisdom, gave him more. They basically became an overdose in the hospital. People now are thinking, maybe there's something to this. Maybe he is trying to be suicidal. July 15th, Kurt finally gets help for his stomach. This is huge, because up to this point, he's been to doctors. Nobody's helping him out. Nobody's giving him any real answers. He goes to the doctor, and he finds out that he has scoliosis.
Isn't that a back problem?
It is a back problem, but it pinches nerves.
Oh, okay.
And the nerve that is pinching happens to make a lot of pain in his stomach. He gets the proper medication, and he is literally living life pain-free without having to take drugs, without having to take illegal drugs.
Well, do you know what he was taking?
I don't know the name of the drugs he was actually taking, but Kurt describes it as a miracle. Because up to this point, he needed heroin. This is the first time in his life he feels he doesn't need heroin. So this is a big point for him.
Mind you, they could have been giving him heroin.
They could have. Yeah, they could have very easily been. And I'm not sure what that pill is that helped him. But this is still the first time that he, in his head, regardless of what the pill is, feels that he doesn't need to
He
go
got medicated and he's pain-free.
Yeah, he's pain-free. In his head. This is how he feels about it. So, September 21st, 1993, In Utero gets released. This is not a big follow-up for Nevermind. If you go in comparison, if you go by percentage, this album is a flop in comparison. Looking back on it, this album's a great album. Like, it's got some solid music on there. This is the one where Heart Shaped Box came from. It also has a song called Rape Me, which ended up being very infamous. If you bought the Walmart version of it, it said Waif Me on the back.
Waif Me.
Yeah, but that's what this was. It was such a solid album for a real Nirvana fan, but to anybody that just bought Nirvana because it was popular, wasn't so good and didn't do so well. March 4th, 1994. Courtney wakes up to Kurt being unconscious in Rome. This is very important. These are the beginning of his last days. At this point, when this happens, we have 1 month till he's dead. In Rome, Courtney wakes up and seeing her on the floor at 3:30 in the morning. He took a bottle of champagne laced to the fucking tits with Rohypnol.
Which
Courtney,
is a date rape drug.
A date rape drug, and also prescribed to people at the same time for sleep. Courtney is the only person in the vicinity that has this prescription. So Courtney has a prescription for Rohypnol.
Fishy.
It's already starting to get a little fishy. He's on the ground at 3:30 when she notices. The ambulance does not get called till 6:30 in the morning. That's a long distance between...
So she claimed to have noticed him unconscious and then didn't call any authorities for 3 hours after the fact?
Yeah, not to mention there was blood coming out of his nose too.
Jeez.
So 3 hours he still didn't. Finally, they get the call. Pat Smear, I believe, is at the hospital at this point, and that's for people that don't know who Pat Smear is. He's a guitarist from the Germs, and he joined Nirvana lately.
Yeah, you heard that right, Pat Smear.
Yeah, that's his name. So he joins Nirvana later because Kurt starts trying to take away his involvement with the band by putting another guitarist in there, and that's the idea. And it works out that this guy from the punk scene, which Kurt loved, wants to get into a band, and it just worked out really well for them. Anyway, Pat Smear was there, went to the hospital, and Pat Smear had to make the choice between, and this probably saved Kurt's life at the time, made the choice of, I just go to the hospital and have this junkie taken care of, or I go to the hospital and I say, okay, he's a VIP. His name's Kurt Cobain. He's part of the band Nirvana. You need to take fucking good care of him now. He decides to do that. He says he's a VIP. Now it's in public eye that this happened in Rome, and people are calling it a suicide attempt. Kurt wakes up 20 hours after, works up 20 hours later. He was in a coma the whole time. He doesn't remember anything that happened. All he knows is that he was there, and now he's here. And all he wants for the fucking life of him is a strawberry milkshake. That's literally all he wants. He was so hungry because it's been 20 hours without food, just IV, And
give me strawberry milkshake.
That's what he wants. And they're like, for somebody that has stomach problems, a strawberry milkshake is bad for you.
Yeah, dairy's not the best. Easiest thing on your stomach.
So that was the only thing. Apparently, that's what he asked. But the other notable point in this is when Courtney approached him, the only thing that came out of his mouth was "fuck off."
Wow.
So whatever.
So do you think he kind of knew?
I don't know.
Something was up.
That's the debate
at that
right?
point.
Like at this point, in his head, at least, what most people think is that he didn't know that there was Rohypnol in this fucking champagne that he took. But there was. Like, how did that Rohypnol get in there? Did Kurt try and do it for himself?
And he was told afterwards that this is what you were overdosed on.
Yeah, he knew.
So like he knew.
And he was not on drugs at this time.
He wasn't. No,
He
was on drugs, but not heavy. Not the way he was. He had already started weaning off a little bit. He was still doing cocaine and stuff. I think heroin was at a lesser use at this point, which is a lot for a heroin addict to go lesser of.
I don't see Rohypnol being a recreational drug in any way.
Well, what are you talking about? After we're done here, I brought Rohypnol. So we're all just gonna fucking sleep.
We're all just gonna pass out for 6 hours.
Yeah, sweet. But no, it isn't, and that's the weird thing. Like, how did that get in there? Like the only two things that it could be is somebody trying to kill you, or you trying to commit suicide,
or someone trying to rape him. They took the song too literally.
Well,
he asked for it. All right.
Yeah.
The people in the vicinity was his wife. Probably could sleep with him anytime he wanted to. And Pat Smear. He's a little feminine, but I don't think he was trying to rape Kurt Cobain. I'm pretty sure.
I don't know.
And even if he did, at any point with the amount of drugs that he could have had in his system without trying, he probably could have done it anyway.
Wow.
So this was like the big stepping stone into what's going to happen over the next month, okay? Kurt, very embarrassed. He released statements very shortly after saying, oh, wait, this was just a mistake. It was an accident. It almost seemed like he was justifying whatever happened.
Say you had a wife who was your baby's mama, you loved her to death, and you know what I mean? Like, and you wouldn't go out and be like, how bad does it look on your reputation, let alone your kids and your baby's mamas, if you were to come out and be like, yeah, my wife tried to drug me, and you know what I mean?
Like she was clearly trying to kill me.
She was clearly trying to kill me, yeah. Like, you can't just, like, think of that position that he was put in. Like, I don't know if you would be able to even, if that was the case, even be able to say it.
Yeah, it would be hard to say.
Yeah.
But he was, like, and the one notable thing on this is he was embarrassed. More than anything else. Embarrassment is a big thing on Kurt Cobain that's been happening almost his entire life.
Right.
He got the mansion, embarrassed. He got a brand new car, embarrassed. He took friends to shows and stuff, and he'd have to take a limousine. He was embarrassed that he was in the limousine with the friends. And the friends are like, no, I fucking love this. I've never had this before. This is really cool, because he's still friends with people from Aberdeen, like
right.
people that he grew up with. He's not friends with new people. He didn't really network with the people that were out there. So the embarrassment is a big thing on him. So, March 18th, 1994, due to the suicide attempt, quote unquote, cops confiscate all his guns. Kurt Cobain was one of his recreational things was to buy guns, and he would go out into the bush and he would just fire at pop bottles and stuff. Like, it was just target practice. And I did this when I was a kid, so I get it. Like, it's a way to be able to use your guns non-lethally. Like,
tons of people do it.
Yeah, it's just a thing you do.
Tons of people do it.
Just target
This is all of his guns. It's all he ever used it for, and it was well noted that this is what he liked to do. This was his pastime. It's one of the things that made him feel like home, and especially in like Aberdeen's a small town. He was born north of Aberdeen in some real fucking small town. What do you think they did out there? Fired fucking guns.
Pop guns.
Yeah, that's what they did. So, all his guns get taken from him, and this is March 18th. We're now down to about a half a month away.
So now you stole the man's hobby.
Yeah, you've taken the man's hobby for sure. Somewhere between the 18th and April 2nd, I'm going to say. I'm going to say the 25th is what I originally was thinking, but it may have happened after a certain event that's happening. He runs into a guy named Dylan. Dylan is one of his best drug friends. And if you know any real junkies out there, they have friends, and then they have drug friends. They never mix the two of them. They usually don't cross paths. It's very rare that they do, if they do at all.
And you try and avoid your drug friends if you're living a sober life.
It's almost two different lives, right?
Very much so, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And at this point, between Kurt and Courtney, they were both trying to hide each other's drug habit from each other. Dylan was kind of like they're able to get him the drugs he needs on both sides. So Dylan has been quoted saying, I would get a call from Kurt being like, I need to get some speed. And then the fucking phone would, like, I'd have to click over, because back then you had landlines, you didn't have cell phones, you had to click over to the fucking other line, and it was Courtney asking for heroin. So these two were trying to hide their habits from each other at this point. And anyway, he talks to Dylan and starts talking to Dylan, saying that he feels his life's at risk. He feels at this point, by March 18th, that people are trying to kill him. And he wants a shotgun to protect himself. Now, this is all allegedly spoken, because none of this is in Kurt Cobain's name, but Dylan went and bought said shotgun that would later be the thing that used to kill Kurt Cobain, whether by Kurt's hands or not. This shotgun is probably the most pivotal point in this case that got ignored during the actual research that the police were doing. So in March 25th, 1994, Courtney stages a rehab or intervention at his house. It lasts about 5 hours. Pat Smear's there, Chris Novoselic is there, so basically half of Nirvana. Dave Grohl is suspiciously absent for a lot of people. They're not exactly sure what happened with that, but at this point, Dave Grohl had already been thinking about starting some new stuff on his own, like working on his own projects, which Kurt supported quite a bit. So there is that aspect in there too. So he's sitting there with all these record executives and his family basically saying, if you don't clean up, from your junkie wife telling you need to clean up or I'm going to fucking leave you, you're fucking worse off than he is. Like the amount of drugs that you do. You know, he was trying to get himself off heroin. You're still fucking knee deep in heroin. And you're telling him to fucking, I'm going to take the kid and leave because you can't quit drugs. On top of that, he had Pat Smear and Chris Novoselic saying, we're going to disband the band if you don't clean up. Okay? So this happens. Kurt agrees to go to rehab. And I believe he goes on March 28th and stays for 3 days and then checks himself out. Within these 3 days, apparently, according to the doctor's notes, he did not seem very admitting to the fact that he has an addiction problem, and it could be due to the fact that he felt that he had it under control. There has been times where he's quit before and had no problem quitting, and he feels that he could get himself off. No problem. So he checks himself out. He basically runs away from the rehab center. He doesn't really check out. And this is by April 1st. These are the last 5 days of his life. And a lot of things here are all speculation. And part of the reason it's speculation is because nobody has a true source of exactly what happened. It's just all eyewitness accounts at this point. So April 1st, Kurt bails on rehab, flies back home to Seattle. Courtney is not in Seattle at this point. On the agenda, from what a lot of people believe, is that he really wants to see the movie The Piano. He wants to go home and kick out his male nanny, because there's a male nanny taking care of Francis.
Fuck, do you have a male nanny?
Yeah, I know, right?
No, but my first question is, why is the first thing you want to do after getting out of rehab that you don't want to be at to see a movie?
He's an artist.
It's like, maybe I want to go.
He's an artist. Yeah,
He's an artist, and The Piano was a very art-filled film.
You gotta admit, he was probably loaded on smack.
Oh, I'm sure this. I would not be surprised at all. So he wants to basically fire his male nanny is another thing that he is on his agenda, and the last thing is file for divorce, which he starts. He doesn't actually get to the point where it's filed at this point, but he has started, and this is well known within the community. Filing for divorce is happening because he hasn't been happy basically from the beginning with Courtney, and he knew it. He was just sticking around for the kid.
Wow. Okay.
More or less. And the other thing was to get Courtney Love out of the will. That is the important fucking part. Getting Courtney out of the will loses almost all control of money and power within the Nirvana empire that has been built. Mm-hmm. Super, super important. April 2nd, 1994, so 2 days after leaving rehab, nanny, it's a very uneventful day, doesn't have a lot happening, but what does happen is the nanny sees Kurt, so he is in visual proximity in Seattle, and Courtney Love closes all of Kurt Cobain's credit cards. Some speculation is due to the fact that she didn't want him to have money wanting him to spend anything, and basically he gets trapped. And I'm going to get into why a little later. So
can you do that? Can you close?
Depends how close you are to them.
If they're both on
they're
the credit
married.
card.
So.
Both names are on the credit card.
One person has the right of closing the credit card?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
And you also got to keep in mind that this is April 2nd, 1994.
Right. Yeah.
Interact doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah.
If you don't have a credit card or cash...
And that was just the paper imprint back then.
You're fucked. You can't do anything.
Yeah. I barely existed.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, the amount of money that he would have on him is all he has to do things. So if he has some cash, which he did have some cash because he was able to go see the piano, which I'm getting into right now. Sorry. I jumped ahead a little bit. April 3rd, 1994. Courtney knows where Kurt is. Like, she knows he's in Seattle. She hires a private investigator, Tom Grant. He was an old sheriff for about 8 years. But she hires him as a private investigator to investigate the missing of Kurt Cobain. She already knows Kurt's in Seattle. She heard from the nanny. She knows he's there. But she still hires this person saying he's a missing person. Okay. That's all that really happens on April 3rd. Nothing much. April 4th, one day before he's dead. Now, this is probably one of the weirdest days, in my opinion, because it's so fucking normal. Nothing is weird about this day. Nothing really happens other than two things. One weird thing, but it isn't because of him. Kurt, this is his last little stage in his day. He wakes up, doesn't really do much during the day, decides to go for dinner, has a very large dinner. He ends up going to the movie theater, watching the piano. And then the last thing he does is he goes to a local dive bar where a couple of his friends work. So that's another eyewitness account seeing him there. And has a few drinks. The waitress that's his friend from a long time ago asks him to go to a party. Kurt declines. That's it. That's his day. What happens in the background, Courtney Love calls the police station, reports, Seattle PD, reports that Kurt is missing under the alias of Kurt's mother. Courtney says she's Kurt's mother and reports him missing. Why? Why did she have to say that it was Kurt's mother? Why couldn't it be Courtney?
Was there any claims that he was like telling authorities or whoever? No,
there's nothing. It was just a normal day for him. And this is like the last normal day this past month has been a really fucked up month for him. But this is the last normal ass day. And everybody that saw him and talked with him, like at the bar, says that he seemed normal. There was nothing wrong with him. He didn't seem depressed. He was just his normal self, you know. Talked to them the same way that he always talked to them, and nothing really changed within that manner. April 4th was a very normal day. April 5th. Now, this is the time-determined death. He hasn't been discovered yet, but April 5th is where the coroner has determined this is where he dies, is on April 5th. Due by a temperature of the body is what they do. And it's only a proximity because within that, because it was a controlled environment, where he was found had a controlled temperature. So
this is how fast it would take for his body temperature
this is
to
what
cool
they say.
This. Okay.
They say April 5th. April 6th, 1994. Nanny calls Dylan Carson, which is the guy from Earth that I had mentioned before, to basically, I'm not exactly sure why he calls, but he calls anyway. And the police report that two people have claimed to talk to Kurt on the 6th. His body is in the upper part. Okay, so on the 6th, there's two people. Nothing has come from this because I can't explain this enough. Seattle Police Department did not give two flying shits about this. They just automatically assumed suicide and ruled it off like that. To the point that when they find the body, within 5 days, he's cremated.
Wow. So was there an autopsy done?
No.
Probably not, no.
He was cremated.
Wow.
And there was no wishes by Kurt Cobain in any will that he had saying that he wanted this. This seems like somebody was in a rush.
So you can just cremate someone without their...
If there's no foul play intended, like if they assume there's no foul play and there's no reason to investigate, I think you can. I think it's within that possibility, especially if you have all the money in the world to get it done. You know, like, I've got all this money, let's rush this, let's get this done. Let's work right now. That can happen. And Courtney, at this point, has that type of money.
I thought on suicides you'd almost have to do, like, especially an overdose. That's what I'm guessing. That's what.
Well, no.
Okay, keep going.
April 7th. Love stages a suicide attempt for media attention. She has an allergic reaction to Xanax.
What?
That's what happens. But she checks herself into rehab and makes it look like it was a suicide attempt. And
You cannot overdose on Xanax.
I know, but it was an allergic reaction.
Okay.
Which is what the point is. She had an allergic reaction. She got deemed at the hospital that this was an allergic reaction to Xanax, but she still checked herself into rehab. She left a couple hours later. It was just a stage for media attention, which is one thing that you're going to have to learn, and especially when I start getting to the conspiracy side of things, which is coming up right away. Courtney is a media whore. Okay. That's what she wants. She wants people to notice her. So this is April 7th that this happened. April 8th in Aberdeen, or in Seattle, Washington. An electrician going to the Cobain's house was going to work on some lighting fixtures within the garage. Goes to the upper level where the apartment is and finds a body lying on the ground with a shotgun near his lap, a cigar box not but 5 feet away from him, and a suicide note put into a planter box with a pen stabbed right through it in the planter box. Outside, which is a little strange. He calls the police. It gets confirmed that this is Kurt Cobain, who, as far as the Seattle Police Department has determined, is a suicide victim at this point with a self-inflicted shotgun blast to the face. Notable instances in here is that on the right-hand side of him is that heroin box that he has there, and the shotgun being laid. I think it's laid across his left leg or something. Like, it's very close. It's something to do with that. Oh, yeah, and there's 2 other things on the conspiracy that I'm going to bring up in here. Something about the shotgun shell as well. Okay, so deemed a suicide at this point. Now from this point forward, you need to take everything with a grain of salt, because this is post-mortem things that have happened, and a lot of conspiracy things that have happened. We have now hit the point where he's been discovered. What I'm going to mention is during the April 5th to April 8th, a credit card that was missing from the scene had been attempted to be used 3 times until the day that he was pronounced dead. Like, people found him.
A credit card that wasn't deactivated?
It was deactivated. It was still being tried.
Okay.
So whoever got this credit card, it doesn't matter of how, whoever got this credit card has tried a couple times to use his credit card, regardless.
And
of
it wouldn't
decline.
be Love at this point because she's the one who canceled it.
Yeah.
So it's a third party member now.
Absolutely.
Point. Okay.
Crime scene. I'm going to get into the crime scene bit of things here. It's some of it I could be incorrect on. This is just to the best of my knowledge of what has happened. Shot up on 1.52 milligrams per liter of heroin. That's a lot.
That's in his blood. So I guess they did do an autopsy in order.
At least within the toxic screening, anyway.
Yeah.
And within that amount, they claim is 3 times the lethal dosage of heroin in somebody's body. Tom Grant, who was the one, which we'll get into in a little bit about his place in here, Tom Grant believes that with this amount of heroin in his system, there is no way he could, A, move himself to where the shotgun would have been from where his heroin was, pick up the shotgun and put it to his face and fire it, because it's already a difficult task to do when sober, to be able to shoot yourself in the face with a shotgun.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about lengthwise and how long your arm is, there are ways around it with your feet. Clearly, we're not idiots. We know that this is possible, and it has happened before. But with that amount of heroin in his system is where he finds it unbelievable.
And for people who don't know, when you're injecting heroin, it's going to hit you pretty much instantly. So it's going directly into your bloodstream.
As soon as the rubber band's off, right?
It could be before that, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, that is the first little bit of the crime scene that seems fishy to Tom Grant. Another one is blowback of the gun.
How far the recoil was.
Exactly. So him sitting down,
sitting on its lap.
He's sitting down like this for the shotgun to blow. Should have recoiled that shotgun at least a couple feet away from him. Mm-hmm. But it was still very close to him. So
you're saying the shotgun was in a vertical position?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
I believe it was. That's just off of like what I've heard.
Yeah.
Again, is this just the best of my knowledge? So bam, fires, and gun still pretty close to him. Another thing that hits the conspiracy side of things is if you think of a shotgun and the way that it's held. Okay, I want everybody at home to think of left and right of a person. When you have a shotgun facing towards somebody, the shotgun shell casing should shoot out to the left when it goes. It comes shooting out this way. So, on the ground facing him, the shotgun shell should shoot out to the right. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Bring it. Yes.
It was about 6 feet to the left of him.
How did it get there?
Exactly. And that's another thing that people are asking about with the shotgun shell. That's the basic premise on the conspiracy side of things of him being murdered in the actual murder place. Okay,
I got a couple questions. Since we're talking about the scene,
okay,
you told me that a private investigator was hired probably 3 days beforehand.
Yeah.
Where was this private investigator, and was he doing a super shitty job, or what?
That's a lot of people believe Tom Grant is not a very good private investigator. However, there was an instance where he was with Dylan, and there's audio recordings of Dylan from Earth, Kurt Cobain's drug friend, where Tom Grant and Dylan searched the house with Kurt Cobain dead in it.
How does that happen?
Dylan apparently was redirecting Tom Grant away from the garage the whole time.
But as a private investigator, you have to still... if you're investigating and you're in someone's house that you're investigating, wouldn't you not look everywhere?
Yeah,
his
you
claim,
only have certain access to certain places, though.
And his claim was that it's above the garage, and the way that the house was, it's mansion, road, garage in the back.
Okay.
So he claims that he did not know that there was a apartment above the garage at this point because the way that it was shaped out.
Okay.
So Dylan gets him in, and there is audio recordings of him and Dylan walking through the house, screaming Kurt's name, and Dylan kind of being like, yeah, there's 3 floors, there's the attic, and all this stuff, and kind of talking to him. But it also seems very reluctant, he almost steers him away from the back, which is pretty fishy.
Whoa. Yeah.
Almost as if he knew something was back there and he didn't want Tom Grant to find it. Which is another reason that leads to Tom Grant thinking this as a murder. And you said you had another question?
You keep going with your...
Okay.
It'll come in later.
So I'm going to break away just a little bit here. I'm going to talk about Courtney Love's father, Hank Harrison. Courtney Love's father has had a really strange life with Courtney. At best, I mean, it was very broken. There was at least a couple of instances where he lived with her, but it was only maybe 6-7 months here and there in the first 3 years of his life. He wrote 2 books after the death about Kurt, claiming who killed Kurt Cobain and such to that effect. He's starting to believe that there's a murder conspiracy within here, and this is Courtney Love's father. Regardless of how broken the relationship is, it's still blood accusing, not necessarily of Courtney being the killer, because he never really comes out to say Courtney is the killer. He does come out and say that I don't think Kurt was committed suicide. Yeah, it wasn't well, everybody kind of had the idea that he was suicidal, but that was more public eye than anything. And I have one small audio clip here that I'm going to play. It's about 40. It's like 1 minute and 40 seconds, but it's basically an audio clip saying a poem that Courtney had in the future. So how she sees her life panning out.
What's going to change his will? That's correct. And the will, that's only one of the points that are in that book and also in this book.
Hold on.
Yeah. But who killed Kurt Cobain? I was wondering if I could get you to read. There's a poem in here somewhere. Yeah, this one. Future date. Yeah, I was wondering if you could read that out. The reason I did this in Courtney's handwriting is so that people didn't think I was making this up. This is a poem that Courtney wrote probably in Ireland in 1980 when she lived with me over there. Now, she's told a number of people that she only lived with me for 3 or 4 days. The truth is, it was about 4.5 months. And during that time, she threw away a lot of poetry, and I salvaged it out of the garbage or the fireplace. And one of the things she wrote was future date. I love you forever. I'm going to be your wife. I'm going to keep you around for the rest of my life. I finally got all these flies off of me, and now I can see a future date. A future date right over the horizon, right on the tip of your tongue, which is a reference to LSD, I think. But anyway, I'll destroy anyone in my way. I'll kill everyone, every lousy lay, because I got my eye on a future date.
Okay, so the point of this poem that I'm talking about is this is a lot that is within Hank's mind, thinking that Courtney's capable. Not saying she is, but is capable of actually protecting her assets to the point that she would kill somebody. He has several poems. He only really recites the one. That's the only one I could find. Sorry about the bad audio recording. It's the best I could get. So this basically sets him on a path of like, okay, maybe he was murdered. And I'm not going to say it's Courtney, because right now Courtney has every legal team on her side. Like some of the most expensive legal team she could ever get to basically halt anything that could have any implication on this.
Oh, that's not suspicious.
Yeah, not at all, right? But even to the point that the documentary that was being made on this was riddled with lawsuits. If he found a funder for his documentary, Courtney would very, very quickly sue the funders, trying to get them out of it. And to the point that MTV was backing him for a long time, and then she sued the shit out of MTV,
Wow.
and MTV had to back out of it. Okay, so this is basically like Hank, what he's been through. Like he's basically saying this is very possible. I have a few more audio recordings here that I'm going to quickly go through. One of the big ones here is during Courtney's 80s stay. She was basically, actually, when she was a groupie for the band Theater of Sheep, she was kind of dating the lead singer. His name is Razbak. He's a little bitter towards Courtney through everything, but the point of this what I'm going to play here is the fact that Courtney was trying to shape him into being famous. Courtney didn't just like let him do his thing. He was being shaped. She said, you need to dress like this. You can't be like that. You have to act like this, because she's trying to get him into the point of fame and making a lot of money, which is super big into this case because a lot of people feel that that's basically what she was doing with Kurt. So this is Ross Razbak talking about Courtney and what Courtney did with him.
Wanted him to be what Kurt later became.
She at that time though thought that it was a male-dominated world. She thought the only way she could achieve stardom was through a man. And she had all the ideas. She started dressing me in Julian Cope's clothes, Ian McCulloch's clothes, everybody's clothes. And finally I got her to agree to this thing of like, you'll lay off, you'll let me do my band and become famous on my own. She had an agenda for me. And that was what was in most of those letters, is she wanted to make me into a rock star to the point where I stopped wanting to be a rock star. I wanted to do anything but get away from it, because I would have ended up like Kurt. I mean, I would have ended up fucking shoving a gun down my throat. You know? What else could you do?
All right, so that's basically how he felt about Courtney after all this had happened. But he had felt this way beforehand, too. It's part of the reason why Courtney moved on from being this groupie at Theater of Sheep and moving in towards Kurt Cobain and Nirvana.
There's a lot of women that, well, I mean, gold diggers, right? Like,
yeah.
There's women, I mean, that's not an unseen thing or an unheard of thing, right? It's, you know, it makes sense, right? A lot of women are doing it, especially groupies.
Oh, yeah.
Like a groupie, like, why else would you want to be a groupie? Like, a lot of the time it's to be in the fame, yeah, and be involved with the money, right? Like, eventually you're hoping to hook up with a band member, right? Like, you're trying to be with a band member. Mm-hmm. Right, so I think like it's not
unheard of, right?
Unheard of.
For me, what I'm getting out of this small little interview that happened there is that not what Courtney did, per se, but an outlook or an outside perspective of Courtney driving Kurt towards this goal that Kurt doesn't have. Mm-hmm. And in the process,
controlling bitch.
Yeah, very controlling bitch. Like, let's face it,
sociopath.
And I'm gonna mention Tom Grant, because now I'm gonna get Tom Grant's story in here. Tom Grant was an advocate saying that before Courtney, Kurt's life was just drugs. After Courtney, it was drugs and suicide. Now, a lot can be said about the power of speech with people. If you're surrounded by somebody that is constantly saying, "Oh, why don't you just go kill yourself?" or you're going to go commit suicide all the time, that gets implanted in your mind. Tom Grant believes that before Courtney, none of this was really entered his mind because it was never really mentioned until afterwards. Now Courtney's there constantly talking about these type of things and literally saying quotes that I had just said. They do have like audio recordings of this stuff. If you want to, you can look this stuff up. But it got batted around so many times that how could you not at least think about it? And being in that depressive state, because if you are on drugs for being sad, it tends to emphasize / like grow even worse with the plan. Sure. Yeah, it's almost like that bad trip we were talking about before, right?
Yeah.
If you get yourself on that mind frame, the trip's going to make you keep going that way. So he believes that well in advance this was premeditated. Not necessarily to kill, even though he does kind of think that. Like if you hear any interviews, that he's almost certain that Courtney has something. And there is a website that you can check out. It is his website called www.cobaincase.com. This is all Tom Grant's information. You have to take it with a very serious grain of salt, because remember, he's not a very good private investigator. But he does do a lot of fucking research. So like he gets the information and holds on to it. He doesn't necessarily legitimize the information. So definitely take this with a big grain of salt. But that was his big thing, is that either one, he killed or she killed Kurt, or B, that Courtney batted around the word suicide so much that it led Kurt to get to that position.
I think this is why, another reason why this is such a big conspiracy, and like whether or not he committed suicide or not, is like you can also look into his past and be like, this is a young kid, didn't have a family really, was sleeping under a bridge, started doing drugs at a young age, didn't have a home forever, and then got placed into stardom unexpectedly almost. Could say in a month. I mean, you could say that's overwhelming to say the least, when you go from nothing to having everything,
that's a lot,
right? And then you have someone controlling, someone close to you who really means everything to you, kind of controlling that and influencing it. And the fact that she could have drugged him before, and there's all this weird stuff to it. I mean, that's like, to take all that in and be okay with all of that and having that huge transition in your life. I mean, that's why there's such, I think, a sturdy case on, you could have suicidal thoughts. That could be an overwhelming amount of emotions. That could be like taking on this whole new world all of a sudden when you're that age, and then being on drugs at the same time. I mean, right? That's a huge...
It's an undertaking.
That's an undertaking.
Yeah, to take that on in your life, like... I think of like my upbringings of being like, I'm not poverty, but I've definitely been like the mid class, and like kind of just scraped by when I starting my life, as an adult. And then getting into this position, like if that was instant, I wouldn't know what to do with my money. I would probably would have started doing heavy drugs.
That's why kids, you see your young stardom kids, they don't know what to do with their money. That's why they start getting involved with drugs. That's why they start, because you don't know. When you go from nothing to having anything you want at your disposal, I mean, that's way too overwhelming.
That's a lot of pressure.
You don't know what to do. Yeah, it's for sure.
It's unintentional pressure. Like you're not trying to put it on yourself, but there's a hell of a lot of pressure within there. So I had mentioned earlier another thing that I'm going to go through really quickly some of Tom Grant's.
I want to ask one more question quick about the butler, or not the butler, sorry,
the nanny.
The nanny.
Yep.
Why? So why did he want to fire the nanny?
That is up for speculation.
And why was the nanny involved with this? Like, so why was he, even though his intentions were to fire him, I don't know if the communication was there beforehand.
It didn't happen yet.
So it didn't happen yet, but his intentions were to fire him, which, first of all, why? And then second of all, why was this nanny walking around the house with the private investigator?
That I'm not.
Why wasn't the private investigator just
It wasn't the
doing his
nanny.
job?
It wasn't the nanny with the private investigator.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That was Dylan, his best friend.
Okay, yeah. Sorry.
The nanny, however, I don't know much about. Then that's another thing, because the nanny hasn't really come forth. There is a other nanny that has come forth on some stuff, because they had a lot of nannies, which seems to be an ongoing thing with stars when they have nannies. They go through them quickly. Yeah. Part of the reason why is that they live such a lifestyle that they're never home, so the nanny basically has to put his life on hold or her life on hold, and is raising this kid. So it's hard to keep a nanny, and that's what the one girl that did come out. I can't remember.
It's interesting that he wanted to be fired, though.
Yeah, and that's the question, right? Like, what was on his mind?
Not too far before. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
why
a great
did they
question.
Want to hire this?
And I wish I had an answer for that one, because this nanny has never really been talked to, as far as I know. For the most part, like I'm sure the cops did.
And nannies would know a lot. I feel like about a personal life on someone, right? Like if I had a nanny, they'd know a lot about my life and what I was doing and how I was feeling, right? That's like that's a really close tie, right? It's like you're trusting this person with your child, right? And you're around them probably more than you are your friends.
Some of the
best
when
you're at home.
Evidence we've got on this case, which isn't much, but some of the best legitimate evidence that we got from this case is from the previous nanny before. She ended up quitting because of the same reason that we just spoke about. But what she would talk about is that when Kurt was there, Kurt didn't want to be there. Kurt wanted to be somewhere else. He didn't want to be part of this life that he was in, and like every aspect of this. And she's a strong believer that it was suicide.
Okay.
Because of which he really did not want to be there. And this, again, is the nanny before. So this isn't the nanny that
not the most recent.
Yeah, not the most recent that apparently Kurt wanted to fire. Okay, so there is a few more things on Tom Grant that I'm just going to kind of blow by real quick. This is some of the things that he puts onto the conspiracy side of things. One of Kurt's credit cards I had mentioned was missing at the scene. It got used 3 times until the news came out saying that he was dead, and then it stopped. That was it. That was all. No more of this credit card trying to be used. Another big one is that it took over a month for them to fingerprint the gun that Kurt used.
Whoa.
And there was no fingerprints on it. Almost as if it got wiped away. There was only a few partial fingerprints. Now, if you know anything about holding guns, your fingerprints are going to get on there somewhere. And a full-sized one.
Yeah.
You could, just even moving it around.
Especially if it's his gun.
Yeah, especially if it's
and
his
if it's
gun.
not even a pistol, it's a two-handed shot. You got to put 2 hands on the shotgun, right?
Someone's fingerprint should be on there somewhere.
Somewhere. And they only managed to pull small partials, not enough to be able to get anything.
Wow.
So that's another one of his, yeah. Another one that I'm going to go through here at the end is a suicide note, but I am going to mention it here because it was coming through Tom Grant. So at the end of this, I will be going through the suicide note. But the suicide note, the last 4 lines of it are in different handwriting by the looks of things. They can't prove that because he could have.
That's what I was going to say. The next thing, how do we know that this is because you can do right.
Yeah, you can check writings and stuff.
Yes.
But with the amount of heroin that's being used within there. And the depressive state that he was in, there is a chance that he wrote most of it and then ended it off. So there is that chance.
Right.
But when I'll be showing you guys the picture, and people at home, when we put this live, we are going to be putting these pictures as references on our Facebook page. So you can just go to facebook.com/WTFN or whatever. Just search us up. You'll find us. And those pictures will be there. While you're there, put a like on there so you can get all this type of information every time it comes out. Anyway, so that's the last little thing I'm going to really mention about his conspiracies. There's tons others, but this is the big ones. Not to mention all the like family history with them. Next person I'm going to mention of interest. There's about 2 more here that are important. Dylan Carson, best friend of Kurt, drug friend, lead singer of the band Earth. You have to take everything this guy says with a huge grain of salt, and part of the reason why is he was a bigger junkie than Kurt.
Yeah, like most drug dealers, you gotta take them for anything they say most of the time, right? You gotta take it with a grain of salt.
Huge one. Yeah. Now this guy, I'm gonna paint a picture for the people at home because you're just listening. But when you see him in his interviews, he comes out and he looks like he's got pimples all over his face. Now
that's not a trustworthy motherfucker.
But what are they? They're not pimples. He has fucked his veins so bad in his arms that he has to inject heroin in his head.
Oh my god.
See, well, that usually means he's used all his other options.
Yeah, he has nothing
his legs,
left.
his feet, everything.
Hence why I'm saying take everything he says not seriously.
But then
just hear what he has to say.
If he's that fucked up of a guy, maybe someone could have paid him off.
That is a possibility, and that's
but
where
he was there with the PI.
He was directing him.
Yeah.
Keeping him away from that extra apartment above the garage, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where some of these things it gets really fishy, right? Yeah. This is also the man that purchased the shotgun that killed Kurt.
Yeah, that's
Kurt. Yeah. And that's something you can't take out of your mind.
Probably supplied the drugs too.
Oh, guaranteed he supplied the drugs.
Which he could have cut or not cut to make stronger or less.
I don't think he was the dealer. He was the middleman between the dealer.
He still could have cut it.
Yeah, very easily. Very easily. So, like I had said, he's still a junkie. And anytime the murder comes up to him, he's very reluctant to say it was a suicide. Or not reluctant, sorry. He jumps to it. It's suicide. Mm-hmm. In an interview that you can check out, he literally was like, if I thought somebody killed Kurt, they wouldn't be here. I would have killed him. But the way that he talks about it is he stumbles around his words a lot when he's talking about it. So it seems very insincere the way that he's saying it. On top of that, every time any type of conspiracy gets brought up to him, he pauses for 2 minutes to think very, very carefully about what he's about to say. And that's every time somebody talks to him. And if you can check out the interviews on there, and that's exactly how he does. He pauses, sits there thinking. And for a junkie to stop and think about what he's going to say like that says a lot about his character. It's something that's happening. There's something within his mind. Mm-hmm. He needs to think. He doesn't want to just spit shit out because it may get him caught into a corner or something. Again, the fact that he was being, steered away from the garage with him is another thing that needs to be mentioned because that seemed to be happening. And again, the gun, there is no proof that Kurt ever saw this gun. Just people saying that he bought the gun for Kurt, and whether it's in his name or not. People knew that he was Kurt was feeling this way, where he was feeling threatened, that he was going to die, but that's all we have. So at this point, we assume that gun is in Kurt's possession, assumably. We don't know for a fact, which is going to bring me on to my next person in this case, El Duce. I know it's his fucking dumb name. His name is Eldon Hoke. That's his real name.
Does he call himself El Duce?
He does. He goes by El Duce. He's the drummer / lead singer of the self-described, I'm not fucking with you, he calls his style of music rape rock.
Rape rock.
Rape rock. And he's the band that he was in is called the Mentors. Now, I've just, so you can get a gander of exactly what this person is, I've got a small clip of the song. We don't have to worry about strikes. Nobody knows this fucking song. But this is one of the songs by the Mentor. This is actually what he uses to promote himself. It's terrible.
Yeah, that sounds like rape rock. Or
yeah, I've never heard rape rock, but I would
if I was trying to find rape rock, this would probably be what I'd find, right? So here's the big deal for him. He claims Courtney came to him. This is, again, he's part of the punk scene, so Courtney would have run across this band at some point, but even by mistake, and saw that he was a very, like, sketchy dude.
I hope by mistake.
Yeah. But that's the thing, though. He's sketchy as fuck. So you can't take really what he says as fact. And that's the hard part in this, because this is the first person and only person that claims he got an offer from Courtney for $50,000, and in his words, to whack Kurt Cobain. Whoa. Now, I'm going to put this as, it's a little bit of an interview, but you guys do need to hear this to understand exactly what he says. This is his interview about that whole situation.
But you did some deal with Courtney, right?
Yeah. She offered me $50,000 to whack Kurt Cobain. Yeah, I was telling you this.
She what?
$50,000 to whack Kurt Cobain.
And that's a fact, is it? But people might think you're not the most reliable witness.
Well, that's too bad. You may not be the reliable witness your own self. Now think about that one.
Checkmate.
Yeah. Think about that one.
All right,
you know, when she offered me money, God dang, I wish I would have taken it, man. But I know who whacked him.
But how are you going to whack him? Did she tell you how to do it?
Yeah, blow his fucking head off.
So where were you going to find him to do it?
Well, up there, and she gave, mapped it out. I mean, up there in Bellevue, wherever they live, right outside Seattle. I know right where the house is. I know right what garden pop him in. I just didn't think she was serious.
Wow.
That's kind of messed up.
It's a little messed up. Now, the thing for me the only type of, like, because I tend to, like, see people's actions the way that they talk and watching this thing, and his stature and stuff doesn't lead me to believe that he's lying the way that he's doing.
No, he sounds pretty genuine about it.
Yeah, he's joking around about it at this point. Like, he doesn't feel like he needs to prove that he's telling the truth, which is a lot to be said about a liar. If they don't feel they need to prove what they're saying, that says a lot.
I mean, he's the founder of Rape Rock. It's not like he's worried about someone destroying his character.
Yeah, character is not something he's worried about. Yeah. That's for sure. Another thing that gets mentioned in the interview that I didn't want to make it the huge interview with him, but he does mention that Courtney already has the shotgun. And we have to keep in mind, yes, Dylan was Kurt's best friend for drugs. He was also Courtney's best friend for drugs. Mm-hmm. And that's something that needs to be taken into consideration. Now, the fact that he's saying the shotgun and all these things, and this is something that he'd been claiming for a long time without it ever really being on record. Here is the big thing that happens with El Duce and why he's being mentioned and needs to at least be looked at. El Duce did this interview that I just played. 2 days later, he got hit by a train. Whoa. Nobody knows.
Why does that always happen?
Yeah, like the train's just out of nowhere. But no, nobody saw him get hit by a train. They just saw his body there afterwards. How did the train conductor not notice? Almost every train accident, it's a stop. That's another thing that happened. So just his body's by the train tracks, fucking dead.
And the train just kept going?
I guess so, yeah. The train wasn't there because it wasn't found for another day, I believe. A day or two after it happened. And this is just 2 days after it goes into this sense here. Now, I'm going to do a very quick mention because I have very little information on this. But there is a Seattle police officer that Courtney wanted to head this case. I can't remember his name. Deputy something. But this deputy, Courtney specifically named when talking about the missing persons. Like, I want this person to head it. Courtney has been on tape with him talking about how she wants him to help take care of situations.
She's paying him off, motherfuckers.
That's the thing, right? He's dead too. He died very shortly after. Mysteriously. It wasn't the train accident, but it was a little mysterious from what I understand. I don't know all the details, and that's why this is just a mention because I don't have enough facts to say this is what happened. But that is something that did happen. Courtney did mention this deputy by name, and this deputy is now dead. And it was around the same, like it was fairly shortly after all this stuff was happening, because apparently, quote unquote, he was going to come out with some of this information. That's all I know. Very, very small amounts. Like it's very, I don't know. I can't really say it. Like I wish I had more information. I wish everybody had more information on this, because this might be the key to like having the actual truth based on in there. All right, this is coming to the close of my conspiracy. I'm sorry this is taking so goddamn long, but I'm gonna end this off with a reading. For those of you that...
Is this the suicide note?
This is the suicide note, and it's going to take me a minute, but I think it's very important that everybody kind of...
Of course we want to hear this.
Yeah.
It's the peak.
Okay. I'm going to read it, and then after I'm done reading it, I'm going to just make a little blurb, and then I'm going to ask you guys what you think happened in your own mind with the information that I provided you with, okay?
My dearest Courtney.
Actually, this one is written to Buddha. Buddha was Kurt Cobain's imaginary friend when he was 3 years old. And he has his aunt talking about that. And within this, he decided to write this note to Buddha. That's a little strange. Okay. Speaking from the tongue of an experienced simpleton who obviously would rather be emasculated, infiltrated, complaining, this note should be pretty easy to understand. All the warnings from Punk Rock 101 course over the years, since my first introduction to the, shall we say, ethics involved with the independence and the embracement of your community has proven to be very true. I haven't felt the excitement of listening to or as well as creating music along with reading and writing for too many years now. I feel guilty beyond words about these things. For example, when we are backstage and the lights go out and the maniac roar of crowds begin, it doesn't affect me the same way in which it did for Freddie Mercury, who seems to relish in the love, and have admiration from the crowd, which is something I totally admire and envy. The fact is, I can't fool you, any one of you. It simply isn't fair to me. The worst crime I think of would be to rip people off by faking it and pretending as if I'm 100 or having 100% fun. Sometimes I feel as if I should have a punch-in time clock before I walk on stage. I've tried everything within my power to appreciate it, and I do. God, believe me, I do. But it's not enough. I appreciate the fact that I and we have affected and entertained a lot of people. It must be one of those narcissistic statistics who only appreciate things when they're gone. I'm too sensitive. I need to be slightly numb in order to regain the enthusiasm I once had as a child. On our last 3 tours, I've had much better appreciation for all the people I've known personally and as fans of music, but I still can't get over the frustration, the guilt, and empathy I have for everyone. There's good in all of us, I think, and I simply love people too much. So much that it makes me feel too fucking sad. The sad, little, sensitive, unappreciative pieces. Jesus, man. Why don't you just enjoy it? I don't know. We're getting close to the end here. I have a goddess of a wife who sweats ambition and empathy, and a daughter who reminds me too much of what I used to be. Full of love and joy, kissing every person she meets because everyone is good and will do no harm. and that terrifies me to the point where I can barely function. I can't stand the thought of Francis becoming a miserable, self-destructive death rocker that I've become. I have it on good, very good, I have it good, very good, and I'm grateful. But since the age of 7, I've been hateful towards all humans in general, only because it seems so easy for people to get along that have empathy. Only because I love and feel sorry for people too much, I guess. Thank you all from the pit of my burning, nauseous stomach for your letters, your concerns during the past years. I'm too much of an erratic, moody baby. I don't have the passion anymore, and so remember, it's better to burn out than to fade away. Peace, love, empathy, Kurt Cobain. P.S. Francis and Courtney, I'll be your altar. Please keep going, Courtney, for Francis, for her life, which will be so much happier without me. I love you. I love you. Whoa. That's a suicide note.
Which parts were written in
Okay, that's the point that I am talking about.
Every third letter. Spell it out.
Everything up to peace. Everything up to peace, love, empathy, Kurt Cobain is written in one handwriting, clearly from one person. The things that are
yes, Courtney did not do it.
Yes. But that is it. It's the PS. There's no PS written on here, but this is the PS in the letter. Francis and Courtney, I'll be there. I'll be your altar. Please keep going, Courtney, for Francis, for her life, which will be so much happier without me. I love you. I love you. Those words are
different writing style,
which is very strange because if you listen to all that, it sounds more like a retirement letter to get out of the band.
It sounds like something he's thought out.
Yes,
drawn
exactly.
Out.
It didn't sound like a suicide.
It sounds like something that's written by an artist.
Absolutely. So, I'm going to get you guys to take a look at it. You can see the bottom 4 lines versus everything else.
Yeah, that's clearly different.
It's a very different handwriting.
Yeah, it even seems like it's written.
Oh
yeah.
Yeah.
And this was the note that was stabbed within the planter box outside of the room that he was found dead in. So very different handwriting written on there. What a lot of people allegedly think is what it is. Okay, so I'm using the word alleged. Get used to the word for the next couple episodes because I'm pretty sure allegedly is going to be used here and there.
Legally, we have to use it.
So allegedly, this is a retirement note to get out of Nirvana, to no longer play for Nirvana, which he had been talking about doing for months. Was found, got written on at the bottom,
turned into a suicide note, and then shot and left outside so that people would think it's a suicide. My question to you guys is, what do you think? Okay, remember when you said the part where they think the second part is different because maybe he was on heroin?
Yeah, it's possible of the drugs and the emotion that he was going through.
No, it's not. Look at the picture. When you zoom in on the actual picture, his handwriting is elegant, it's small. You look at the second handwriting and it's bigger, it's not as cursive, there's not as many curves. If you're fucked up on something that's going to like diminish how your motor skills, your writing is not going to be bigger and cleaner. It's going to be sloppy. It's going to look like you wrote it with your wrong hand.
It's in fucking crayon.
Yeah.
But no, you got a solid point, though, is that bottom part does look very different. It's not just like a little bit different. It looks very different in comparison to everything else.
You can easily notice it.
Yes. And that's another thing that people really talk about is like, and that's where a lot of the argument comes from. It's just weird.
Yeah.
It's so strange. And these are all the facts that I can present to you as I know them. Stuff that I've looked out throughout all the years. And that's where I want to sit on this. And this is the end of my conversation on it. But my question to you guys is, what do you think?
It was like untangling a mystery.
That
whole episode. I was like,
I felt like Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's strange.
It is strange. And like, I think me and I guess Aaron both agree that didn't seem like a suicide letter to me at the beginning. It does seem like different handwriting. I don't want to take out the cause for suicide. There's obviously a lot backing it, and it seems like a good play, right? If you were gonna whack someone who has a lot of money, and like it seems like the right play to do. But again, a lot of the evidence, like you said, doesn't add up to a suicide as far as like the shot, no finger. Like there's a lot of fishy things in the whole thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah, it's fishy from top to bottom.
Yeah. But like also at the same time, I mean, it could have been a gangster motherfucker who she just paid off, or someone paid off, right? Who just came in, took his credit card, took whatever is in his wallet, blasted him in the head, and tried to leave it as a suicide crime scene. I mean, that's not an unheard of thing either. And I mean, getting paid off, especially in the early 90s for murders, was like not uncommon.
No, it really wasn't.
It was,
and back then forensics wasn't as what it definitely isn't what it is to this point.
It barely had DNA evidence.
It was closed.
Yeah, it's done. Must be suicide. I see a gun. I see a person.
There's a letter. That's it. Yeah.
It's got to be
anything else.
You don't need to read shit. But that's the thing, right? So like, I mean, taking all into account the relationship that Courtney and him had, the divorce, the changing of the will, the gun itself not having the fingerprints on it, the position of everything, like where the bullet goes, where the position of the gun is, the amount of heroin that he was on, and an argument can be made, which we haven't mentioned yet, is that there is a tolerance that can be built. But that is a lot of fucking heroin in somebody's system. Yeah. That's a lot of tolerance. Yeah. And at this point, he'd only been doing heroin for 3 years maximum. At that point. So that being added in, like Dylan, his whole experience and how he is and the way that he kind of treated all these situations. And El Duce, the way that he was
I like how you
approached.
said too with like Dylan and the friend thing. It's like, so he was a dealer to both.
Yeah, both of
them. Usually, it's like a dealer can be easily influenced with money as well, right?
Yeah,
so
all that influences them. Usually.
Again,
100%, right?
He's not a dealer. He's a junkie. Gotta
okay,
keep that in mind.
junkie. Sorry,
because he's not the dealer. He gets the money. He gets
face.
the stuff for them through somebody. So he's the third person in this. So a junkie will do
so you're
just
giving
about
a junkie
anything.
a bunch of money.
Yeah,
exactly.
And not knowing if the shotgun was ever in Kurt Cobain's possession before this, that's another thing that you got to take into account.
I think there's too many questions. There's no way anyone can come up with a solid, this is what happened based off all of that.
Oh, it's crazy, right? And it's really difficult to kind of like figure out.
But it's also hard to document that it was a suicide.
Saying that, right? I blame the male nanny because that's just suspicious.
Why are you hiring a male nanny?
There's something fucking wrong with it.
I'm gonna go ahead and let's hang him.
Yeah. He's got to be the person. Okay, well, this is mine. This is what I think happened, and this is the best description I can, because I've been researching this since probably '96, and like small little bits, and I've watched these things kind of like unfold and like throughout the years, like, oh, this is some new information. This, and this is kind of like, it doesn't look like we're getting more information. That being said, they did reopen the case about 4 years ago, so that's something. Seattle refused to do it for the whole time up until then. I knew actually, that's another small little thing, but the commissioner refused to do it all the way up because of sloppy police work is what most people think. They don't want to get blamed for the shit. The new commissioner came in and instantly reopened it.
Yeah, no one wants to admit blame.
Yeah, it's really strange. But this is my thought. Occam's razor. Either one of you know what that means?
No. The simplest explanation is probably the right explanation.
That's right. That's exactly what it means. I think that he committed suicide.
Really?
At this point, yeah, I choose to believe this. I'm not saying I know this to be true.
I like how you ended this with that. I really keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. I choose to believe that he committed suicide, not out of fact or anything. I choose because it is the easiest answer to go by. I think a lot of the times conspiracies are built on people not being able to believe that this thing could have happened. Mm-hmm. And that's how a conspiracy gets born. And then it kind of spins out of control sometimes, for instance, this. So I choose in my own heart that he tried to commit suicide. That being said, it's because of Courtney. Courtney drove him to this point, and Courtney is at least 50% to blame for this death. I still think that he did it, but it probably wouldn't have happened if Courtney didn't drive him directly to it.
I think that's fair enough.
I like it, yeah. I like it. That's fair.
That's my thoughts on it. So before we end off this episode, because I went on for a long fucking time, folks, I do have to cite my resources, just so you know. I did get a lot of it from a website called timetoast.com, timeline/events leading to Kurt Cobain's death with a dash in between each word. I also got it from Nick Broomfield's Kurt and Courtney movie, which is not the best resources because that's where a lot of that sketchy shit came from. He's known for doing stuff like the Biggie and Tupac conspiracy, which is another one I'd love to get into one day. But that Biggie Tupac conspiracy, he did that. He also did a documentary on a serial killer named Eileen. They call her the very first female serial killer. She's actually like the 52nd one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, so he did that one as well. There's another movie that I do recommend people checking out called Soaked in Bleach. It was also riddled with a lot of lawsuits.
Recent,
it is very recent. To the point that they couldn't even get it onto Blu-ray. It had to stay on DVD because they couldn't afford with all the lawsuits that they had to deal with. And then there's a final one that is super questionable. It's called Montage of Heck, which is another really recent one. This one is totally funded by Courtney. You can tell by the amount of nude scenes she has in it. It's fucking ridiculous. But there is some things and something to be said about the home videos that she was able to release. And that gives me a little bit more information. So those are my resources of which I've gotten these from. I invite everybody out there to do your own research on this. You will find stuff that I missed for sure. But fuck, was this fun? I'm not gonna lie. Like, I loved doing this, guys. This was
lost for an hour and a half there.
I didn't know much about this.
No,
I'm really sorry if I fucking went on too much, guys.
No,
it's
that
fine.
needed to be said.
Yeah.
We needed to unfold it how it did, right? It was such a complex.
I was really questioning about doing the life of Kurt, but I felt that a lot of the stuff that happened when I was doing this, it kept growing and growing because I felt a lot of what led up to his death was stuff that happened in his life that led to the question. Not to the actual death, but to the question of what happened. You know, like his life as a child, and like that's all fucked up. And then Courtney's life as a child, and like all these weird, like it's like the perfect fucking storm for a suicide / murder in both sides. Yeah, Courtney and Kurt. It's like you couldn't have asked for a better brew to make this work.
Whoa.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I feel on it. But those are my thoughts on it. You know, like I've said, how I feel, what I think actually happened in the situation. I don't know if you guys agree, but that is truly and honestly how I feel. And I think at this point, in my life, and this has helped me do this, I can put this conspiracy to rest for me. And this is something that's been weighing on me since the 90s because I love Kurt. Yeah. And I honestly feel at this point that I can finally take this part of my life and put it away.
Nice.
Well, I think that's a good way to wrap her up.
No kidding. So come in next week. Tune in next week. We're going to talk about part 2 of the conspiracies.
Ooh, we're doing a two-parter.
We're doing a two-parter.
Might even be a 3-parter.
There's so many conspiracies out there. But one I'm going to touch on next week. We're going to talk about the moon landing. 1 in 15 people believe that it did not happen. So that's going to be a huge one.
I cannot wait for you to get into this. This is going to be fucking awesome.
And then possibly after that one, I think we're going to stick to these longer. For at least for these next couple,
I think our specials we should be sticking. to these
get each person to talk about what they need to, and I think I'm going to talk about MKIM Ultra and government mind control.
I know so little about this, but fuck, I can't wait to hear it.
I've been waiting for this.
I got questions. I got questions now. Does it have anything to do with the weather control?
Oh, yes.
Yes! I fucking love it.
They've been doing it for years.
All right, if you don't already know, this has been Why the Fuck Not, where 3 friends sit around one table and bring topics of discussion. You can find us on Facebook. Just search us up, Why the Fuck Not. You can also find us on SoundCloud, YouTube with WTFN Podcast, iTunes, and of course you can find us on Podbean. Thank you so much, people. You guys have been fucking awesome. You've been putting up all of our actual views have been growing lately. And to us, that you don't understand how important this is to us, how good it makes us feel. Every single view you guys give
Everyone matters.
Makes such a huge difference in our lives. And thank you for going with us on this journey, right?
Like, share, comment.
Yeah, we're always looking for those comments. I'd like to hear what you want to hear about.
Yes.
If you have any questions or comments on any of our episodes, feel free to leave them on the Facebook page, and we will get back to you.
Absolutely. You can also email us at whythefucknotpodcast@gmail.com. So please reach out to us because we will reach out right back.
Don't throw spoons at hookers.
Yeah. See you next time.
Peace.